Welcome back, capital F football fans, to the O&O Sports YouTube channel. Today, we are looking back at the last week of the 2024 college football season. It was rivalry week, and it did not disappoint in the slightest. And as always, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to get the latest news and analysis throughout the postseason. And without further ado, let's jump into this video, starting with our predictions. This is the finale of our predictions. It spanned over the entire regular season, over 800 total games that we predicted, and we have reached the end, folks. The 75 or die challenge has come to a close, as the regular season has come to a close as well. And this week, we predicted exactly 50 of the 67 games correctly, which puts us at our final total. And after 836 regular season capital F football games, we correctly predicted a total of 619 for a winning percentage of 74% on the year, just 1% short of that 75% mark. And that means we have to give away $100 to one of our followers, which could be you. All you have to do is subscribe and follow our social medias. We'll choose one of our followers at random in the coming weeks, so be sure to hit that link in the description for your chance at 100 big ones. The winner will be announced on Christmas Day 2024, so you still have time. But with that out of the way, let's look at our big impact matchups from this week, starting with the game. And boy, was it the game. We thought Ohio State would crush the Wolverines 31-10, but Michigan pulls out the upset 13-10. Insane game this week, and that goes without saying. But both of these squads were going at it, both defenses especially. There wasn't even 500 total yards of offense in this one, and Michigan just has the blueprint on Ohio State, it seems. I mean, they literally did the past few years, but this year, I mean, there's just no explaining it. Complete roster overhaul, kind of a new head coach, new staff, no signs stolen that we know of, and you still can't figure out how to beat the Wolverines. We have to ask the question, is Ryan Day's time in Columbus coming to an end? We'll save what we think about that for another day, but for your player of the game, it's going to be the kicker, Dominic Zavada. Only the second time this year a kicker has been your player of the game. He went 2 of 2 on field goals, 1 of 1 on extra points with a long of 54, and he hit that go-ahead field goal with 45 seconds left in the game. And in a game like this, your kicker being perfect truly can decide the outcome. I mean, literally just ask Ohio State. Their kicker goes 1 of 3, and they lose this one by 3. And Buckeyes fans, I'm not sure what to even say to you at this point. After that, it's Tennessee at Vanderbilt. We thought Tennessee would win 24-21, and they end up winning 36-23. This is exactly the kind of performance you want to see if you're a Tennessee fan. Great win against a decent Vanderbilt team, and the biggest exclamation point on this one is your player of the game, quarterback Nico Iamaleava. He's been shaky at times this year. It's proven to be a bit more difficult for Josh Heupel to get him to play up to what we know he can, but they were able to do it this week. He had an amazing game, going 18-26 passing for 257 yards and 4 touchdowns through the air, with an additional 6 carries for 42 yards. Great day all around for Tennessee, and exactly what you needed as a confidence boost heading into the playoff. And after that, it was Miami at Syracuse. We thought it would be a shootout. We thought Miami would win that shootout 45-34, and Syracuse actually wins the shootout 42-38. And we said before this game, this could be the best quarterback battle of the year, and it was for sure up there. Over 70 pass attempts between the both of them, 700 pass yards, and 5 passing touchdowns. And we thought Miami would win this game in this kind of scenario, but we just picked wrong. Kyle McCord and the Syracuse Orange pull off the big upset at home and win this one with a lot of help from their defense, making a few big plays late in this game, as well as their running back LaQuint Allen, who was able to shift around and be a consistent safe target for McCord, who is your player of the game. He went 26 of 36 passing for 380 yards and 3 touchdowns in this one. And then it was the Iron Bowl, Auburn at Alabama. We thought Alabama would get the W 27-20, and they do end up getting the W 28-14. This was a pretty decent win to end the year for Alabama, but the biggest concern for them is they did not look good in this win. 4 turnovers, almost 400 yards allowed by a bad Auburn team, and they let up 6 yards per play, all in short to say this game did not look good enough to redeem the Tide in our opinion. And we are not the committee, but but we don't think they deserve to be in. They looked a lot like they did in the game against Oklahoma last week. Just had a few more bounces go their way. Not very convinced they're a playoff contender, but your player of the game in this one will be Jalen Milroe. It's a classic performance for him. 18 to 24 passing for 256 yards and an interception, and then 17 carries for 104 yards and 3 touchdowns. And next, it's the Lone Star Showdown, Texas at Texas A&M. We thought Texas A&M would win this one 27-24, but Texas actually pulls out the 10-point W, 17-7. And this was definitely a defense-oriented game, but we were dead wrong in which defense we thought would be better here. Texas was able to contain A&M's rushing attack, and the Aggies just did not have the firepower to overcome that. They lose in a pretty interesting game. Not as much fireworks as one might have thought. Like we said, definitely a defense-first kind of matchup, and your player of the game is going to come on that side of the ball. It's the defensive lineman Vernon Broughton, who had 3 tackles, 2 sacks, and a fumble recovery in this one. His presence was definitely felt in this matchup. And last in your big impact matchups, it's Kansas State at Iowa State. We thought Iowa State would win this one 32-27, and they end up winning 29-21. What a great way to finish the year for the Cyclones, beating your rivals and securing your first 10-win season in program history. Matt Campbell has done great things for Iowa State, and that defense also did great things in this game. When Rocco Becht was not having his most efficient game, the defense stepped up, forced 2 fumbles, and gave that offense opportunities to go out and win this game, which they end up doing. The rushing attack was also great between Sama, Hansen, and Rocco Becht himself. Very efficient day, and your player of the game is actually going to come on the defensive side of the football. Jacob Ellis, just 2 tackles. Not amazing for a linebacker, but he does end up getting a sack and a very important fumble recovery in this game. And now it's your game of the week, South Carolina at Clemson. We thought South Carolina would walk this one off 30-28, and they end up winning 17-14. And this was just an awesome back and forth game the whole way. Surprisingly, not as much chippiness, not as much shenanigans, unlike some of the other matchups on this list. Just 2 solid squads going at each other. It was a big day for that Clemson defense early on. It looked like they were in control of this game at the beginning and had to contain on that Gamecock offense until the legend of Lenoris Sellers continued. He is your player of the game in this one. He put that team on his back and literally carried them to a win here. He went 13-21 passing for 164 yards and an interception, but had an additional 16 carries for 166 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had the game-winning touchdown, and we want to also shout out the linebacker Demetrius Knight as well. He had the game-winning interception as well as 8 tackles in this one. Great day for him as well. Great day for South Carolina as a whole as they win your game of the week this week. And now it's your team and player of the week. As always, you guys get to vote on it, and you did vote on it this week. The team of the week is none other than the Michigan Wolverines. Like we said earlier, it was not an amazing game by any stretch, but they made their opportunities count and they shut down that Ohio State offense, who only had 77 yards on the ground to Michigan's 172. Michigan was also very efficient on third down this one and was able to get big stops on third down the other way, and that's all they really needed to get their 4th win in a row over the Buckeyes. And for your player of the week, we want to preface it by saying all year we've refrained from giving the player of the week award to a player on a losing team, but we just could not exclude Haynes King from our list this week, and he actually ends up winning the vote, and rightfully so. By himself, he had over 400 yards of total offense and 5 touchdowns. He was essentially Georgia Tech's entire offense, and he put his body on the line in those 8 overtimes to try and win this one for Tech. Came up just short, but still an amazing performance, and he is your player of the week this week. And now for our Let's Talk About It segment, we want to talk about the playoffs. More specifically, if we think the playoffs are good or bad, specifically the 12-team format. As the season is starting to wind down and conference championships are upon us, we want to take a look at this season and truly consider what this playoff will mean. And if you ask me, my opinion, there really is no need for there to be 12 teams. I mean, a lot of the teams that are going to be in probably don't deserve it. That's why there are so many arguments against one another. I will obviously be watching the games, and we are very excited for the potential upsets, the new intriguing matchups, the rivalries that might come out of it, and the coverage we'll be able to get out on the playoff. But there really just aren't 12 teams that can win it all. I mean, realistically, they're not going to cut the playoff down anytime soon. So for next year, realistically, we would prefer getting rid of auto bids. That format just doesn't work in our opinion. It's a little bit confusing. Not sure Arizona State needs to be the 4 seed. Not sure SMU or Boise State need to be either. You can find a way to implement conference championships, but the way it is now just doesn't work in our opinion. But for what it's worth, it's going to be a ton of fun. The home playoff games this year should be electric, and while we do think adding more and more games could cause a college football inflation scenario, we think it could end up making for a very exciting playoff this year. And moving on into our week 15 top 25, for the teams that dropped out, we only have one, and it is Tulane, who drops from 17 after their loss to Memphis this week. They'll drop out of our top 25, followed by Illinois, who jumps into our top 25 after their win over Northwestern to cap off a very good 9-3 season. And after them, it's Texas A&M dropping 5 spots to 24, who loses to Texas this week. Not a bad loss, but they're 8-4. Could have dropped them out this week in all honesty, but they'll hang on at 24 because of that loss. Followed by Colorado, who jumps up 2 spots to 23. Big win over a terrible, awful Oklahoma State team this week. They'll jump up 2 spots, and then we have Army jumping up a spot to 22 after they get their win over UTSA, and who will play their last matchup in 2 weeks against Navy, followed by UNLV, who will sit still at 21 this week, and who will be jumped by Memphis. They jump up 4 spots to number 20 behind BYU, who moves up 1 spot, who will finish the year at 10-2 after their win over Houston, followed by Clemson, who drops 6 spots this week after their loss to South Carolina. But with the win by Syracuse over Miami, Clemson can still make the playoff with a win over SMU this weekend. Crazy scenario, but after those 3 ACC teams, we have Alabama, who jumps up after a mediocre win over rival Auburn. We still don't believe they're a playoff team, so we refuse to rank them as such. But after them, we have Iowa State jumping up 4 spots to 14 after their big win over Kansas State this week. And after them, it's their conference championship opponent, Arizona State, who destroyed their rival Arizona this week. That matchup is set to be one of the best of next weekend. And after them, it's Ole Miss jumping up a spot after a reasonably disappointing win over Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl. They get the W, but in pretty mediocre fashion, which is why they'll be jumped by South Carolina at 11 after their marquee win over Clemson. They'll be in the playoff mix after that one, followed by Ohio State, who drops 8 spots to number 10 after their abysmal loss this week. We've already talked about it to death in this episode, so I'll spare you the anguish, Buckeye fans. We'll just move on to our next team, SMU at number 9. Great win this week. They'll finish 11-1 and first in the ACC in their first year in that conference. Great year, great week. They'll move up to 9 this week, and then it's Boise State, who sits still at 8, because after them we have Tennessee jumping up 2 spots, who gets a pretty solid win over Vanderbilt this week. They looked great, so they'll jump up into our top 7, followed by Indiana, who absolutely curb stomps a terrible Purdue team that actually ends up firing their head coach, Ryan Walters, after the fact. Tough weekend for him, but he'll bounce back. He's a great defensive mind. He'll probably get a defensive coordinator job this year. But next we have Georgia after the 8 overtime victory over unranked Georgia Tech. Not a great look for them. We're not going to move them down this week, but we're also not going to move them up this week. Unlike our next team, Penn State at number 4, who jumps Georgia. They get a big win over Maryland, and they'll be playing in Indianapolis this week after that Ohio State loss, and they'll be followed up by Notre Dame at 3, who has snuck all the way up into our top 3 after a great win over USC. USC put up a fight, but Notre Dame shut it down and got the W here, just like Texas at number 2 after their win over Texas A&M this week. And then for the 7th straight week, we have Oregon at number 1 after they get the convincing bounce back win over their rival Washington. We say bounce back, they just had a bad game against Wisconsin 2 weeks ago. They didn't lose, obviously. They finished at an outstanding 12-0, undefeated, atop the college football world as the only undefeated team left in the country heading into their conference championship game versus Penn State. What a great year for the Ducks. But last in this episode, we are going to have to take a look at Todd's red carpet. Insane chaos. We need to see what Todd's projected outlook on the playoff is. And after the sun has set on the final week of the 2024 college football regular season, this is exactly what the playoff bracket will look like according to Todd. And there are some huge changes with just conference championships left to go this year. Be sure to pause and soak it all in, or go down to our social media pages and check it out, and hit that follow if you want a chance for $100. Links to those will be in the description. Let us know what you think. And as always, thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you did enjoy it, and be sure to tune in later this week for our conference championship predictions. Thank you for watching, and we will see you there.